I thought that this was going to feel one way and it's not.
Right.
So maybe I'm chasing the wrong thing first and foremost. Maybe I'm chasing an outcome. Really what I need to be thinking about is the process.
Let's say what I'm doing may not be satisfying me internally. Instead of dealing with that, we'll mask it by posting it and eating off of the energy of someone else's reaction.
You having a better understanding of self is vital for the health of your relationship. The more we're able to talk about and understand ourselves, the more I can communicate to you like my needs or the things that are triggers for me. Now both people are coming in feeling equipped and having the tools to be able to healthily navigate through the relationship.
The danger of comparing is that it's not just that you're comparing what they're doing, you have little insight to where they're going. I'm not really too interested in what you're doing because we may not be trying to go to the same place.
I've been sitting here thinking about all the things you do for me. It's the same for you.
We back, y'all, for another episode.
Back.
We're back, man. My name is Ken, and I'm with my lovely wife. Introduce yourself, babe.
My name is Naomi.
Oh yeah, I like that. It was a nice radio voice. Very calm.
I used to want to have a different voice, like kind of like more raspy or something. Like I don't know, like
was it like because I know there's like I don't know if it's an assumption, but I know like when people have raspy voices, I'm like, yo, they gotta sing.
Yeah, man. I wish God would have given me a voice like that. But I'm thankful for what I do have.
He
That's
knew
all
not
I
to
can
give
say.
it to me. Shit, I'd be on the road right now. But babe, I came across a stat.
What stat did you come across?
And here's the thing about it. Before I thought about it, I thought it was crazy. It said, so this was from American Association of Pediatrics, right? They said that the average age people start dating is 12 to 13 years.
Really?
And like the older you get, the more 12 to 13 feel
Sounds
like
young,
they just started walking, right? And I'm like, bro, that's crazy.
Sure.
But I was doing the math. I'm like, yo, I was in the 7th grade. That puts me about 12. So I'm like, okay, I get it. It still sounds young, but I get it.
Right.
How old were you like when you first started dating?
To be honest, I was probably around the same age, about like 12, 13. But like when I say dating, I'm talking about very loosely. We talking about
really
just talking. That's what I mean. Dating, like for like actually like for real dating, maybe high school. But yeah, talking like
we wasn't 13. Going nowhere.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? See you at school. But I think what's crazy about it when I think about even like 12 to 13 is that there's people that think that about when we started dating at 18 in college.
Right.
And I think it's interesting because when you're in it, you don't feel as young as you are.
Right. Not at all. Yeah.
But I think 18 is young.
It's pretty young.
But the question is it too young to start dating? And I know for us, we've been looking back and thinking and talking, right? And kind of asking that question, like, how young is too young?
Right.
How old is too old?
Right.
Is there even a age thing, or is it something that's outside the age bracket, that's independent of age, that will kind of in turn determine like whether somebody should be dating, whether or not we're ready to date? Right. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that age doesn't matter as much.
Okay.
I think that there's not necessarily, now, of course, there are some things you want to keep in consideration.
Right.
Like when you're young, you are a little less, you aren't as mature as you would be 10 years from then, right?
Right.
So there are some things, right? But I think that like ultimately, no matter how young you are or how old you are within a certain age, like 18 to like, being an adult, young adult, I think that there's a capacity to have a very healthy relationship.
Okay.
It's just going to take some other pieces,
Right.
some values, some things that are growing in you for that to be able to be healthy.
So what would you say in our relationship, us meeting at the age that we did, what was like some of the benefits of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there were a couple benefits. I mean, I feel like when we're talking about the development and growing as an individual, as a human, there's something unique about relationships and romantic relationships specifically, because I think it can happen in like, friendships and family as well. But I think it's uniquely different for relationships because you're really trying to grow with someone, right? And you're probably around that person more often, especially if the end goal is like something like marriage or you're trying to be in a long-term relationship. There's some things that even friendship and family relationships won't necessarily get, I wouldn't say deep enough for, but like you can like walk away from, you can be like, if I'm having a situation with my family or my sister or something, like we can take a separation, you can say, I'll deal with you later and not necessarily have to confront that. Right. And I think with relationship, and one of the pros that I saw with us, dating a little bit younger, is that it kind of allowed for us to approach things that about our individual selves that we might not have for maybe 5 more years, to be honest with you. Because so for example, like let's say communication, right? Like conflict resolution. Eventually I would have had to deal with how do I handle conflict with other people, right? In the workplace, like there's so many different places in many different scenarios in which you're going to have to deal with that. But that can be prolonged because we're talking about we're just, in college. So it's going to be some time before you really have to maybe face that head on. But like as we were dating, there were several scenarios in which we're, having to talk through like, what's my background? Like what has been my habit of addressing conflict? How can I adapt to someone else's communication style? How can I communicate my own thoughts better, or in a more clear way so that you could understand it? And I think that, we went through kind of a process of and we still are. I mean, we were still growing, but at a young age, I feel like it was almost expedited in a sense where we could look ourselves. You say it often, like have a mirror, look ourselves in the mirror, and have to kind of see things that we might have been able to put off and just, kind of get comfortable with about ourselves for, years until we had to, maybe until we met each other at a later time or whatnot. And then it would have come up, but that would have maybe been 5 years from then. So I think that was one of the pros, in my opinion, is that like we really went on this journey of like growth together. And I think that you helped, and really it was Christ. Like he was helping. He was refining us in ways that like, we could both see the benefit of like, wow, like this, us being together and God refining us through the different scenarios that we're facing. And I think that it just was something very unique, and I feel blessed that we were able to grow in that type of way.
No, I mean that was deep because I think college was, at least for me, one of the first times where I didn't have a separation of church and state. Like, I mean, because it's like you're around people all the time. And that was my first time realizing that I was an ambivert. I think I'm saying it right. Ambivert. I thought up until college that I was an extrovert. But it was because I had separation, right? You're at school and then you go home. You're whether with your parents, and for me, like I had my own space. And when I get to college, I'm in class, Then we go to lunch. I'm
Right.
with people. You know, we might go to the gym. We might hang out. I'm with people. You know, we go to dinner. I'm with people. And now I got a roommate. Right? So I got a suite mates. I got roommates. I'm in a dorm.
Surrounded, just constantly surrounded by people.
So there was this aspect where I wasn't understanding why I was feeling so socially fatigued. And I think that what happened in terms of our relationship, right, is that like no one ever pointed out like, yeah, you know, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, I think the fact of I'm experiencing like a new understanding of myself. Right. And there was an aspect that because you were in proximity, right, because you're much closer, you're more affected by if I'm leaving the dorm, we about to hang out or something like that. Oh, Ken's quiet. Okay, that maybe one day, but day two, Ken's quiet.
Right.
Be like, yo, what's up? Is it me?
Right.
Did I say something? Did you like what's going on? And it's like, I don't even know. Right. But I think that because I think especially with men, I don't know if it's like that with women, but when you can find a safe space, you're more willing to open up. Because I think that sometimes I've noticed with men doesn't have the tendency to open up about some of the things that they don't understand about themselves with each other.
Right.
And so there was this aspect where like, I would be like, I don't know. But like, it's not that I don't want to hang out with you right now. It's just that I'm just tired.
Right.
I'm not sleepy.
Right.
But I'm tired.
Right.
Right. And then so it grew. And so you kind of started seeing me have like, I would have like my alone time or like I wouldn't go to every event.
Right.
Or like, especially once after freshman year, I no longer had a roommate. Like I had a suite mate. And so like I had my own private space. I had my own room.
Right.
That kind of helped. But there was this aspect where us having this proximity of having this relationship early on, there was an aspect where I'm able to see myself through your lens.
Yeah, right.
Ken, you're acting more quiet than you usually are. Like, what is that? I'm like, I never considered that, and nobody else asks that. Right. And so it was allowed for me to address and understand what it was that I was feeling or experiencing much earlier on than I'm at work and I'm just ticked off at somebody. It's just like, I already know now that like, I need time alone.
Right.
So that I can be able to handle y'all.
Right. And you know what I love what you said? Because you were like, you were able to see yourself through my lens.
Right.
And I think that's so like profound because like oftentimes like sometimes we would like to think that we know everything about ourselves. Right. But the truth of the matter is we don't. Like, you know, we are constantly in learning more about our own behavior and who we are. But like sometimes it's so key and it's so important to have someone else's vantage point of ourselves because there's something that we're going to miss, you know? And so like you were saying, my lens and vice versa, your lens of me was critical for me to see things that I was never, I might have seen it 5 years down the line, 3 years down the line, maybe by, you know, tough experience or whatnot. But being able to see like what you're seeing, it's
a game changer.
It's a game changer.
It's a game. Yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, and I think this is probably what we should kind of transition to, kind of like I wouldn't even call it the cons, but some of the challenges of meeting at a young age. Because if there's an aspect where I can positively grow, right, because I'm able to see myself through your lens, there can also be like this aspect where like I can develop insecurities because I'm taking in what somebody else's lens might be of me, right? Or whatever the case would be, there's this vulnerability. Right. And I think that when we think about being young, one of the challenges that I think someone would have to overcome dating young, or what we had to overcome dating young, is that we don't quite know our square. And by square, it's the space that we occupy in the world. Right. Who we are, how we express ourselves, what's my identity, what emotions, what things trigger me, what things don't trigger me, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are my gifts, what are my talents, like all these different things we understand of ourselves over time. But sometimes when you're dating at an earlier age, you're presenting yourself before you completely know yourself. Right. And someone's learning you before there is a complete development of who you are to learn.
Boundaries, right.
And so there's this aspect that you're two people can be dating with not clearly defined boundaries of their square.
Right.
And I think there's an aspect of one, there's going to be a process of defining those boundaries. What are my values? What are my priorities? And then for the other person dating that person, not only are they having their own defining, but they have to be patient with the other person that's defining. So it's like there's this yin and the yang, right? Where like I'm experiencing it, but I got to be patient with you.
Right.
You're experiencing it, but you got to be patient with me.
Right.
And that can be a very challenging thing to navigate in general. Right. And I think that it's heightened at a younger age, but I think it's independent of age because we're always learning ourselves. So like, I think for you, when you think about the square, right? Where I guess right now we're 10 years from the point of us dating, beginning our dating. Like, where do you feel like you are in defining your square? And where do you think you were when we started dating?
Yeah. So I feel like when we started dating, I had, and you used this before, but like the corners.
Right.
So I'm gonna take your thing. Corners. But yeah, like the corners where there is something there between kind of growing up in a Christian household. I had an understanding of who God saw me as. Okay. But there was still some, that's why I say corners, because I'm still developing in that area, right? Like I think that it's a continual thing. Right. But I had some certain values and understanding of like who God said I was, right? And then what pieces of Christianity I wanted to live and abide by. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but at least there was some understanding. Like I, how I want to present myself to the world. And so I think that like those were some of the pieces. I think I had a very clear understanding of what I aspired to be, because once I got into college, I was like, I'm not playing because in high school, I kind of was playing a little bit of games. Like I wasn't really as focused as I needed to be. Right. I was just kind of enjoying life, but in college, I understood that like this 4 years is going to set the rest of kind of like the next 4 years of my life too. So how do I want to end up after college? And I knew that my behavior there would matter. And so in essence, I think that like pieces like that. So my core values and who I aspired to be, I think was kind of defined. Right. To a degree. Cause like I said, like now that I'm older, I look back and I say, there was a lot of work that God was trying to, that God was going to bring me through over the next few years of my life, right? So as much as I thought that they were defined, I still had a lot of growth that I needed then. And I think now it's more than the corner. Like I guess I would say we've been developed. Like there's lines now that's close, but I wouldn't say that the square is completely defined. I think that I'm a lot more. There's been a lot of progression since college. I think that there's a lot of things in life that happen that allow for that to be defined, you know what I mean? Where, whether it be loss, in terms of family, like death, whether it be understanding what priorities are important to me, outside of whether it be like what work looks like, what family, building a family looks like, what relationships look like. All of those things are much different than how I prioritized them when I was 18.
Got you. 1,000%.
And so I think that like while I don't have everything defined, there's a lot more clarity as to what's important to me, my priorities. Very my values are clearer, because as much as I did have like a Christian upbringing, a lot of, Christianity can sometimes be traditional, right? So it's like traditions rather you fully understanding it for yourself.
Right.
And so even now, like at this age, I now know why I believe what I believe. It's not because anyone else told me or, because it seems like like I've had my own experience. And how about you? What would you say where you are in terms of like your square and, where
back
you were
in
at
the day.
18? Yeah.
I think the irony is that I thought that, so I definitely had corners, right? But as we were talking, I think that I had a little bit of an ignorance and arrogance, which is a dangerous combination, right? It's one thing to be arrogant, but know you're ignorant.
Right.
It's another to be ignorant and not arrogant. But when those joints are combined, like you're less. It's like you don't know that you don't know that you don't know, right? And I think for me, like I thought my boundaries, my square was kind of defined. I thought I did. And I realized that it was in pencil for sure,
good.
right? And I realized that it wasn't a bad thing, right? Because especially when you're, the reason why you write in pencil is because there's going to be mistakes, right? And you might have to erase some things.
Right.
And so I realized I had drew a line of my identity and performance, and it lasted until I came across failure, right? And so a bad exam or like not getting an internship, right? And so when I didn't get the internship freshman year, I looked at I'm like, oh man, I think I'm not what I thought I was, because I thought I was some hot stuff. When you reading over your resume, you're like, well, this is good. Ooh, that is good. And so I think that like I had to erase that, because this identity in my performance is not sustainable. Do I need to continue to put forth great effort? 1,000%.
Right.
Diligence, commitment for sure. But to place who you are on that, I think it was just dangerous, right? And I think that some of the principles that my parents had instilled, specifically with the relationship with God, that became more center focus, not because of the lessons, because I've already I caught what they were teaching. I just hadn't had the experience to make it real for me yet. Right. And I think that, like you were saying, like walking with you through certain losses of family, being sick and having to take a year off from med school, like those were pieces where like really kind of, I think, took a pen, put that little mark around my faith, where things sat in terms of my priorities with relationships with people. Because if you're sick and you're not sure if you're going to make it, there's almost some switch. It's almost like the pandemic, right? Like, you have all these stores, but once that pandemic hit,
only the things that were
essential workers, essential items, right? You start to see what's necessary for life and what's just accessories for life. And I think that like that became clearer. And so I realized that my boundaries at 18 that I thought were defined, my values and my priorities, were actually in pencil. And
that's good. That's good.
That as I gotten older, I realized I had to erase some things and place them where they should be, right? Put God first, right? And put career in its proper space and family in its proper space. Viewing time differently and all these other things. And I think now I'm at the stage where I'm putting pen. You know what I'm saying? Like these jokers is in pen.
Right. You said permanent.
No, facts. Because I think that there's enough of experiences, not to define everything. I'm still learning and growing, but there are certain things that have experienced where it's more clearly defined, right? And so I'm no longer I know for a fact that this is rooted in rock. This is solid foundation, right? And so this is where I stand, and I'll die here. Right. And so those points are in pen. Like our relationship, that's in pen. Right. My relationship with God, that's in pen. Right. My family, that's in pen. Facts. Even our vision, the vision that God has given us for life, that's in pen. Right. And so there's other things, certain hobbies, certain things, race and stuff like that. But that's kind of like where I'm at.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. Okay. So, we're talking about like how, this square, right? That it's something that everyone needs to kind of understand, like for themselves. What space are you taking up in this world, right? And that can include your strengths and your weaknesses, your triggers, all these different things. And to me, sounds a lot like, self-awareness, like knowing how you show up in our relationship. For me, if I'm thinking about my strengths and my weaknesses, that's going to be very helpful for our relationship, because if I know the aspects or my triggers, for example, like if I know where I'm triggered, I can more easily communicate that to you so that you understand where I'm triggered and that we can kind of work through that, right? So what do you feel like the role of self-awareness plays? How does self-awareness play a part in terms of like defining the square?
I think it's everything. And the reason being is I remember in the Old Testament, I don't remember that exact book, and I could probably throw it in the show notes or something like that, or description. But Joshua has said something profound, right? He told some of the children of Israel, he's like, all right, some of you might do this, you might obey this, you might worship that, because there's a lot of things that people surrender to, right? Whether it's money, fame, fortune, their careers, whatever the case, this is where they place their value, their priorities. But he drew the line in the sand. He said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, right? And what informed that decision was his awareness of what mattered most to him and his family. And I think that a clear understanding of what we value will inform exactly the decisions we make, the priorities that we'll set. And that requires a self-awareness, because everybody might have, it's almost like this aspect of like and that's the dangers with social media too, is this opportunity to compare, right? And the danger of comparing is that it's not just that you're comparing what they're doing, you have little insight to where they're going.
Okay, that's good. That's good. You want to break that in?
So it's like, for me, it's like, I'm not really too interested in what you're doing, because we may not be trying to go to the same place, right? And it's not that where you're trying to go is anything wrong with that.
Right. It's just,
it may not be where I'm trying to go.
Right.
And so I think that the self-awareness is this aspect of, what has God called me to do? Right? Because he's given everybody talents. Right. He's given everybody gifts. And Paul used to describe, for some, they plant. For some, they will reap, right? There's this aspect of he uses this aspect of the work that he was doing. He gave this comparison to farming, but he said that everybody's not going to do everything. Right. That some people are going to plant the seeds, and some people are going to nurture and water those seeds. And so it's this aspect of, what role do I play? In the bigger picture of things, what role do I play at home? Like, I'm in school right now. Not everybody of my classmates are married, right? So how they may be navigating their day and then going to happy hour afterwards is different than what I'm gonna be doing, right? And so there's this aspect of what matters to me, right? What gives peace of mind intrinsically? What value and gifts does that God has given me that will inform what value I give to the world, right? To the marketplace, to my family, to my friends. And so ability to understand all those will allow for there to be a level of priorities. Right. And the reason why we have priorities is because we don't have infinite amount of time. Right. And so I guess when we think about self-awareness, I guess what role does, I think, like, how do we get there is the question. Like, how do we get to like, this matters to me? Because it's one thing to see like, all right, family, friends, like, but how do we get to the point where we define that this is how it means to me? Like, in terms of, you say all the time that how important your family is to you, and how that contrasts to the time you want to spend at work. Like, what informs that decision that if I had to choose between the two, I'm going with fam?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I think it can stem back from all the way like growing up, right? Like, I spend a lot of time around my family, and we have a good time, you know, when I spend time around my family. So dating, even back then, it was something that I might not have really at 8 or 10 been like, oh, this is a value of mine, but it was being built as a value of mine because of the experiences I was having with them, right? And then as I get into college and I'm away from home, right? And I don't have as much, I can't contact, you know, I can't easily be in that, you know, where I'm at home,
right.
you know, then I'm realizing like, man, like, I really miss my family, you know, I'm missing those experiences that I've had, you know, growing up, being able to be so close. Right. And the same with friends too. Like, you know, so sometimes, you know, how they say that absence make the heart grow fonder or whatnot. Right. So like there can be experiences like that kind of make it clear, like, man, in this moment, I wish I could have, you know, that. And so it's not that what I learned was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to maybe be around all the time, but there are other things like now that I'm much older, I'm like, you know, I have to adapt and adjust. So I might not be there, but like it's a priority of mine. Right. So I have to find a way to either call or be in contact so that that priority is and that need is met. Right. But I think, so experience, and, you know, and then just life happening, you know, because I think sometimes we think we know what our priorities are. Right. And we think we know what we want. And then we get there, we arrive and we realize, actually, this isn't what I wanted. Right. And I know we talked about in that first podcast, like, you know, just kind of understanding like what your values are. Right.
That's rich.
And for me, for a long time, I thought I knew what I wanted in both career and life and achievement. And, you know, I would consider myself like a go-getter in the sense that like, if I want something, I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to exhaust the means that I can to try to get there. Like I'm not afraid of hard work, you know, and trying to like, you know, grind it out, I guess you could say. And, you know, when I would get to the point, you know, that I thought I wanted,
right.
I'm like, you know what? This don't feel like I thought it would feel like. Right. You know, this isn't, you know, hitting the way that I thought it was gonna hit. Right. So what is this? And so I had to really take some time. And so like you said, how do you get like it's like this element where like you have to sit and be like, I need to think a little bit more about, reflect a little bit more on my experiences and how does this truly line up with what I want in this moment? Because I think our values and our priorities can shift. I think that like there's aspects of our values that can be foundational, right? Okay. Where that they probably won't shift very much. But then there's some other pieces. So like things like, who do I want to be? Like in terms of maybe like, let's say career or, or do I want a family or not? And things like that, like those can shift. And I think they can shift a lot based off of experience. And so for me, it was just a lot of reflecting and thinking about, I thought that this was going to feel one way. Right. And it's not. Right. So maybe I'm chasing the wrong thing first and foremost. Maybe I'm chasing an outcome. And really what I need to be thinking about is the process. And so when you think about outcome, you might think of like achievement. You might think of what did I accomplish, right? And oftentimes the things that for me now that matter the most, they aren't outcomes. It's part of the process. Right. It's part of the process. So it's like my family, our relationship, like we live in that every day. You know what I mean? Like, we had like, we moved from dating to being married. So that can be like, you could say like an outcome or an end goal, I guess you could say, but it's not really because you're going to continue. Right. Like we're going to continue to be married. Right. So like what happens after the wedding, you know? Right. And so like there's elements where it's like everything that I think God is helping me to understand that matters most to me now is something that's going to be along with me during the process, not just like something that's like, oh, I got this, I achieved this, I made it to this destination. Because for me now, the destination isn't this achievement. It's the integrity and the experience that I'm having during the journey.
Right.
You know,
that's so rich. Cause like what I'm taking, if for those who are out here taking notes, maybe, I don't know, but there's this aspect of arriving at self-awareness is reflecting on experiences, past, and present experiences. Right. And
even maybe what you want in the future too.
So past, present, and future. Right. And in the middle of that is how, and obviously we don't want to use feelings as a barometer, right? Because sometimes it may not feel great, but it might be necessary, right? But ultimately that experience, like reflecting on where the pros and cons, how did you feel about the ultimate outcome, right? Did you feel like the cost to benefit ratio, what was the cost of that activity versus the benefit of that activity? And letting that be a decent starting point. Because I think that's just so profound. You know, that's just so profound because we all have those experiences. But the challenge I think that we have is that we don't genuinely reflect on the emotional component of it all. And the reason why I say that, I think social media has played a role because, for example, let's say that what I'm doing may not be satisfying me internally. Instead of dealing with that, we'll mask it by posting it and eating off of the energy of someone else's reaction. So for the person that has money, right? I just bought a new car. It's not hitting the same way when I first bought my first car. But the fact that everybody's reaction is,
it
snap.
feeds,
I mean, and that's how it used to be too with even my career path, right? It's this aspect where, oh, you a MD, PhD, like you out here killing the game, curing cancer. Like ain't nobody. But it's like this aspect where at 18, it used to feel like people's affirmation, you know, oh, you were this major, oh, you doing your thing, right? But as I got older, like people's affirmation of it wasn't going to be enough, right? And so you had how I was feeling about it, that ran out. How people were feeling about it, that wasn't enough anymore. So now there's this aspect where through reflecting on it, you be like, okay, this allows for me to feel meaningful. Like this is in line with, and then I think also too, what's important is, man, discernment. And discernment only comes through wisdom, and wisdom only comes through God. Right. But this discernment of like this moment, this situation, this experience, this taught me, it grew me, it stretched me. This is something that I need to continue to lean into.
And like you said, what do I need to extrapolate?
What do I need to extrapolate from it? And then that allowing that to kind of be, okay, this is a value of mine. This was a preference. This is a goal of mine. This was just a short time temporary thing, right? It's like this aspect of being able to categorize these different experiences. And in doing so, it's like, okay, this is meaningful time that I can devote here. This isn't meaningful time. It's like that 4-quadrant thing where you have urgent and important. So that occupies our time easily. And then you have important and non-urgent. Which doesn't get the same energy because even though it's important, it isn't urgent. They said what's the dangerous spot is urgent but not important. It gives this seriousness. It brings the energy towards it because it's urgent. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! But it doesn't yield any genuine fruit for it to be the top of our priority list. And so there's this aspect where, like, by understanding these components, reflecting on the experiences, I think it could help in terms of allowing us as we continue to grow to, all right, this is my list of values. These are my list of priorities. These are my actual strengths. And experience told me, like, I struggle in this area. This is something I need to
spend a little more time with, or you know,
get accountability for, or
stay away from.
This is a trigger of mine. Every time someone says this to me, I feel like a little bit of, I get upset, or I see it on Twitter. This pisses me off. Like something about that enrages me. This could be a trigger, right? Maybe I need to talk this out. It's like,
see what was behind that trigger too.
Right. And so I think all those pieces, I think will help with like, this is my square. these are my standards.
Yeah.
And this is the lens in which I might view dating, right? Like, you fine, but this is a value of mine and it's not a value of yours.
Right.
Like, you cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Well, we be cracking jokes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you cool and all, but like, the issue is, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is something that you rather do, and this is not something that I want to do. Or this is my temperament. This is the speed. This is the vision. This is where I want to go. And this isn't where you're trying to go. And so I think that could help in terms of the guideposts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so in dating and then even in relationship, right? Because if you are in relationship right now, you having a better understanding of self is vital for the health of your relationship. I know, like, for us, it's like the more we're able to talk about and understand ourselves, the more I can communicate to you like my needs or the things that are triggers for me, or and vice versa, so that now both people are coming in feeling equipped and having the tools to be able to healthily navigate through the relationship.
Baby stress. This is how I respond to stress. This is how I can respond to her in stress. Physical touch, maybe rubbing her feet. Like, this is how she's told me. This is how she would best like to be responded to when she's maybe not having the best day.
Right. Exactly. And I think one last thing I'm gonna say here is just like the role of, like, when I think of, like, I love a good like personality quiz or like the DISC assessment or like some of these other things, because what it does is it gives you words to actually put to like things that we experience on a day-to-day basis. Like, I didn't know about like I knew that I wasn't the most direct person, but I didn't know that's like a personality type, you know, being a direct person or being someone who's conscientious or being someone who's supportive of people. Like, these are all things that exist, but sometimes we don't know the depth of like what that is, you know, like what is a supportive person? Like, what are the priorities that they tend to operate from? What are the things that they struggle with because they might be supportive, they might be a little less direct and have a much harder time communicating when they're feeling upset or triggered by something, right? Like, and so all of those things are important because, like, even like in a relationship, you know, you see oftentimes, you know, people talking about resources that help. So like, let's say the love languages, right? Like, being able to understand what your love languages are puts me in position to meet your need. Right. That's key. And that's vice versa. So like, me knowing what my own love languages are helps me understand, like, oh, okay, like, I do, you know, appreciate words of affirmation. And actually, outside of even just our relationship, this is why when I'm in certain spaces, maybe in work, in my career and different things like that, and I don't hear a thank you, or I don't hear, you know, good job, maybe, you know, and I'm wondering why I feel some type of way. Like, well, because I receive words of affirmation in a certain in a positive way. And so it's like, me knowing that helps me put whether the necessary protections, whether necessary, put myself in certain places that I, you know, need to kind of, that would best navigate and support those things happening for me, you know, words of affirmation, or words of affirmation for myself, you know, like learning how to affirm myself at times, because I can be my own, I guess I won't say worst critic, but yeah, like yeah. And so like, I can criticize myself a lot, but like, am I coupling that with affirming myself, you know? And so all of those things are going to be important for me, but also for you in relationship and for everybody else around us. Because the more we understand ourselves, the more the other people that interact with us can understand us, because we can help them understand us.
I mean, because I think that's important, because this isn't a vain pursuit. And I think that people are like, oh, yourself, like, is being self-centered. Like, no, it's not. Right. Because how many people harm other people because they're not self-aware? Right. You aren't aware that you have a trigger. Yeah. You get angry, you outburst, you affect people, you put your hands on people because you aren't aware that you were being triggered. you could have easily stepped outside the room if you understood, okay, this kind of, I can't handle being talked to like this. I'm gonna step outside. Like you just getting all up in arms and worked up. And so like being able to be self-aware is this aspect of being able to understand one of the fruits of the spirit, which is self-control.
Yeah.
You can't control what you don't understand.
Right.
And so I think that that's a key piece. And one of the things that you said, I think that was so important about the love languages, and I think this is also maybe a good tidbit for others as well, is that when we first, I can't remember how old we were when we were first, maybe it was like 19 or 20.
Yeah, probably like 20, I think.
And so we took it like 5 years after that. Yeah. And our love languages had changed. And I think part of that is because, like we were talking about before, we were getting clear on our square.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's also important as well, because like how we begin to interpret love, or how we begin to interpret our values and our priorities as they change, right? It's like, are we aware of these changes, right? And are we still associating with the our past version of ourselves, right? And so I think that like that's also something that to keep in mind too, is that these love languages, or you mentioned the personality assessment, these give words to communicate with one another. Hey babe, like this is something that, like, how I communicate like love and receive love is the words of affirmation, quality time, stuff like that. And so it gave you words to communicate. Whereas before it's just like you knew, it's like it's easy to identify when it's not there. And I think that's what can make defining our square, why it's a lifelong process, because it's like basically it's like this aspect where I'm understanding my threshold for things, and it's only until either that threshold is surpassed and I'm like, yo, this is actually a thing, and then also like this aspect of when we're deprived of something, that's when we can feel it, that's when we're like, oh, this might matter to me, because I ain't get it and I feel some type of way about it. Exactly. And so I think that this is I think it pretty dope. And
so, for sure.
If there was like something you might leave with the people, like what would you say from this 45-hour conversation is like a pretty solid takeaway for people to run off and tackle the world with?
Yeah. So I guess like I would just say, like, if you're, no matter what age, because I know there's a lot of people that, or I guess you could say relationship experts, because we don't claim to be any type of expert or anything of relationships. We just have gone through our own experience. But there's some people that would say you need to be this old to date. You shouldn't be this old when you're dating. Like there's all these different things that people believe make relationships work better or easier or whatnot. And I would say out of this conversation to let those suggestions go, of like, this is the right age, or this is too late to date. Like, let that go. Even if you're holding your own self to that type of standard, like you aren't too young and you aren't too old. Really good. Like what is most important, no matter if you're in a relationship right now, or if you're not in a relationship and you're wanting to be in one, you're dating, is that the best thing you could do is to think about self-awareness and define those boundaries for yourself, understand yourself more, so that all of the relationships that you have or will get into will be a beneficiary of you understanding yourself. Yeah.
That's good, man. That's a good takeaway.
Well, you want to leave us? We got we a little hungry right now.
A little soul food.
We need a little soul food.
We don't do fast food over here. So the soul food for the day. This is a quote by an author named Debbie Ford. She says this: self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without any attachment to it being right or wrong, good or bad. Take an honest look at your life. An honest look.
That's good.
Honest look.
So with that, go reflect after this.
Reflect on that. You know what I'm saying?
Go reflect.
Shoot. We might have to go grab some grub and then reflect.
Right, really. I'm hungry.
Right.
But, all right, old souls.
Old souls. Another great episode. Is it? should we be calling our episodes great?
I don't know. That's why I paused for a second because I was like, I don't know if I want to call it great, but we'll let y'all tell us in the comments.
Right.
Was it good? What did you take away from this?
Right.
Was there any key nugget that you felt was beneficial?
Right. Leave it in the comments. We'll love to read it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share it. Share this video if you think that if there was anything in it that you like, you want this conversation to keep going, because we're all a part of this. We're all in life, and we're all taking it in one day at a time. There's no experts. It's just people that have been here longer than others.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll see y'all next time.
All right.
All righty.